Hello, and welcome to another episode of Happy, Healthy, and Skeptical. We are your hosts, Christy Palermo and Jennifer Hopson. Part two in a series of two, where we're normally interviewing lots of amazing other people that we're meeting in our lives, people we've known, people we're meeting, that we love to interview and get to know and give their stories. So we figured, why not throw ourselves into the mix? So now I have the pleasure of interviewing Jennifer Hopson, partner in one of two partners in our partnership here for this podcast. So let's jump right into it. And I'm excited because Jen and I go so far back. If you don't know our story, we were friends from middle school through high school, super, super close. And then life just, happens and we just didn't see each other as much, talk as much. And then we reconnected because of business. And Jen reached out and asked me to look at some things. And I was more than happy because then we got to reconnect. And now it was 6.5 years ago that I think we reconnected. And now we talk like basically every day. We get to do this podcast together. We get to do business together, and we get to build our lives, grow our families alongside each other from two very different states, but from far apart, but together. And so I just adore, those people that are in your heart that just warm your heart every time you get to see them, hang out with them, and you're just so yourself and they really get you. And Jen is that person, and we can have so much fun, but also we can be like business together, which is so cool. And she brings the best parts out of me for sure, in making me really look at things where I tend to go towards the glitter and unicorns. She's like, okay, let's look at the reality of things, of business. And I totally appreciate that, because she has such a fun side, but also that down to business side that, she'll get you to do what you need to do. And she's been a coach of mine through a lot of our process too. And she really has helped me, along with our mentor, Leslie Humphrey. The two of them really helped me to reach so many goals that I never thought I would reach on my own. But Jen had and always has this vision, a greater vision than I could ever see. And so I'm rambling now, but there's so many cool things to talk about with Jen. So Jen, I would love for you now to share a little bit of your story. Start from the beginning, tell us a little bit about your past and, your life.
I must feel like I want to do a curtsy. Thank you. Thank you. I know you can relate to my curtsy. That's totally fine. Well, thank you for those very kind words. I appreciate that. And I think it's not only me holding the vision for you, but us working together, right? It inspires one another when you have someone working alongside you. You want to do better. You want to show up for that person. You always should show up for yourself, but sometimes we show up for other people, even a little bit more than ourselves. So I appreciate you for that. Um, when I try and take a thought, and I was thinking about this, I do my best thinking in the shower. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that, but thinking about, what I would really want to share with people and what would really be the most impactful thing to share from my life, right? I feel like I have lived a long time, but at the same time, I haven't lived long enough to have a really epic story, what's so important to share. And we had shared last time when I interviewed Christy of, kind of where we come from. And if you didn't listen, then go back and then you'll know, because I'm not going to repeat it. But we do come from Rhode Island, in a small town. And I think being in a small town molded me in a lot of ways. However, my parents also exposed me. And I have to give a lot of the credit to my mother, and from where my father came from, which isn't far away, but he came from Fall River. She came from Pawtucket in Rhode Island, and I was exposed to more than what our small town was. I think there are some people that their direct family was there, so they really had no reason to ever leave. I think that's very similar to you, Chris. You have huge family, but a lot of your close-knit family was in that town, where for me to see my extended family, we had to drive usually about 45 minutes to an hour. And that might not seem like a lot, but it was a world of difference from the town that I was growing up in. And I'm very thankful that I was exposed to so much. And then, went to college, again, not super far away. I think that's one of those things where you never really want to regret things, but I may have made a different choice knowing what I know now, right? I may have pushed myself a little bit further, gone a little bit further away, not had that safety blanket, or safety net, I should mean. And I went to URI, and what I have found was I got really sick. I got really physically sick and I was diagnosed with a hyperthyroid and Graves' disease in what would have been 2003, and it affected everything I did. And again, you do one of those like retrospective looking. I probably should have taken a break from school because it affected me so physically. At the time, I could drink a gallon of water, go to the doctor, and they're like, "You're actually dehydrated." And I'm like, "I've been drinking a gallon of water for the last 7 days." Like, there's no way. And if you don't know what hyperthyroid Graves is, it's your body on hyperspeed. Sometimes you may even hear me now. I speak very quickly and I have to slow my cadence down because it's your body in hyperspeed. So your ball in hyperspeed, your heart rate in hyperspeed, your everything you drink, everything you eat, everything, your sleep is horrible, so bad to where I had debilitating headaches. So it was really difficult for me to navigate. But I also came from this place of a recovering perfectionist, right? But at that time, I thought you had to do everything perfectly. And rather than do things perfectly, I shut down and didn't do them at all. And that was really hard to accept. And so I made it through. I may have taken the longer trip to graduate, but I did. And along that journey, I will say there was a string of potentially toxic relationships that I did have, and they all kind of stemmed from one thing or another, and when I look back is they stemmed from me not being healthy. They stem from me having a disease, not really knowing how to take care of myself, so then self-medicating with alcohol a lot of times, and realizing I needed a change. And I really believe that some I don't what I should say, I don't always believe in running away from your problems. That's not a solution. However, I had graduated and again another toxic relationship, and the people I was spending the most time with, they weren't inspiring me. They were doing less than me, right? So they would co-sign on the bullshit that I wanted to do, and just not focusing on things that were going to get me ahead. So what I did is I really loved the company Under Armour. I still love Under Armour, and I wanted to work for them because I had graduated with a degree in textiles, fashion merchandising, and design, which is nothing like what I do today. I still
I
love
forgot that's
fashion.
your actual degree.
Yeah, and with a double minor in art, I just like creative things, and so I really wanted to work for Under Armour, and so I got a job working for them actually in one of their stores, which seems like such a convoluted way to start working, but at that time I was broke and I took anything that came with benefits and a steady paycheck, and it got my foot in the door at Under Armour, and I really enjoyed that experience and I learned so much about myself, not just because of the job, but I had only been to Long Island, New York for an interview, and then I picked up and moved there. And I didn't know anyone. And granted, it's not that far from Rhode Island. And just to clarify, Rhode Island is a state, Long Island is part of New York. Many people get that confused. And when I lived there, I had to really spend some time figuring out who I was because there was no distractions. There were no people that could be distractions because I didn't have anyone there. There was no nagging responsibility of additional family members because no one was there. The only thing I had was me, myself, and I and my thoughts. And that could have went a lot of different ways, but what I did is I poured myself into the things I could control, and I worked and I excelled there, and from there, not to bring you along that whole journey, I ended up at several different stores, other companies like Vans and VF, and then I made the switch to corporate. Because when you run stores, you think the main thing is, "Oh, I wanna get to corporate, I wanna get to corporate, it'll be so much easier," because if you have worked retail, you work every holiday. You have an odd schedule. It is not the typical 9 to 5, and there are a lot of cool things about that, right? You can go to the grocery store when no one else is there, those types of things, and it's very flexible. However, you work like a dog, period, the end. And you think that corporate is this shiny thing where you're gonna have that 9 to 5 and you're gonna be able to hang out with your friends on Saturday because you don't have to work till 11. And it was the thing that I thought that I really, really wanted to do. And I was able to enter corporate with Nautica. And then from there, I had a tiny human with my husband, and we were in New Jersey at the time. So my oldest son was born in New Jersey. We lived in Weehawken, just north of Hoboken. And it was an interesting time because yes, now I had a partner, but in theory, I was still alone. I was still figuring I didn't have my family right by my side. I didn't have my closest friends all lived 3 hours away. So I did a lot of driving. But it was still a time now to figure out myself with my partner, my husband, and it was one of the best times ever. I could get to downtown New York in about 10 minutes, right? Getting to Manhattan is fun, but I also think there's this expiration for certain people like me where you can only live there for so long where you're like, I'm also slightly introverted and this place is draining to me. But it was great. And we ended up coming back to New England. That was 8 years ago. And that's when I would say the most changed for me. When you're young and you're still trying to figure yourself out, you're willing to do anything. And then there's a point in time where you almost start to settle. I think happens for a lot of people. You have, the partner and the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence and maybe a golden retriever or golden doodle because that's what's in now. And I was working for JJL and it was not that I hated my job. That wasn't a thing. What it was is I was living the cubicle life, and I thought working in retail, "Oh, that's gonna be so much easier. It's gonna be so much nicer." And I, like, found myself being like, "Is this it? This is it." Like, it was hard because I was really like, "This is it." I graduated high school, I graduated college, I'm working for someone else. I, at the time, had my 1 child, I bought a house, done all the check marks that you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to do that. But I was also commuting 10 hours a week and sitting in a cubicle from 9 to 5, sometimes 5:30, whatever. And you get your annual 2% raise. If you do an amazing job, you get a 2% raise. Like, really? Gee, thanks. I'll make sure to provide perfection for your extra 2%. 2% while everything around you is going up 25%. Right? And so I got to this point where I was like, there just has to be something else. And I don't know if other people feel this way, but I've always felt a call to, and I never thought like, oh, I want to go to Hollywood or be an actor or anything like that. Like that was a cool thing, but I always felt like there was something more. There was something higher for me. And I didn't know what it was, but I sure as hell knew it wasn't in a fucking cubicle. That's what I knew for sure. And it was one of those things where I was open to opportunities and I didn't know what they would be. And my younger sister, who now lives in Scotland, at the time, she was getting ready to move there. And I'm an older sister. So if anyone can relate, I was like, how are you going to do that? How can you afford that? And that's when I first got introduced to network marketing. And I will tell you that like changed the entire trajectory of my life. And if you're listening to this and you've been a network marketing hater, it's because you don't know what you don't know. Or you were introduced to the wrong people and the wrong company. It can be the thing that sets you apart. And I think for so many people, we have that. It's like that like inner pull. Like there's something else out there and we don't know what it is, but we have to be open and listen to the opportunities. And 7 years later, because yes, we've been in business for just about 6.5 years. 7 years later, saying yes to that network marketing business allowed me to leave corporate America, the cubicle. It allowed me to add another child to my life that I wasn't sure I could. It allowed me to start my own business. It has allowed me to do a whole lot of things that when I was sitting in the cubicle staring out the window, I genuinely didn't think were possible. And I share that very long-winded experience to say my journey has not been perfect. I have made a lot of mistakes. I have chosen a lot of wrong people. I have chosen the wrong medication, if you will, to serve myself. I have done things by myself and I've done them with help. And I find myself now in a period where I want to take my experiences and my knowledge and serve people and maybe protect them so they don't have to experience the really, really shitty lows. and encourage them to know that whatever they want to do is possible. They just have to be willing to try, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, I've known you for many, many, many years, and even a lot of that I've never heard you tell it in a straight path of everything you went through. And I remember you getting sick, but we weren't in as much touch then. And so hearing that whole journey, like it really hits you hard, because I think a lot of people can relate to having had some kind of illness or injury at some point, and how it can change your life, and how you're not performing in the way you want to, and how you always have. Like, I know you, and that is not you to not show up for things. And
Hmm.
I can't imagine what it's like when you're experiencing an illness that you don't know how or what to do. And yeah, so you just kind of like mask it at the time,
Yeah.
just because it's like,
And
well, I just gotta power through.
you don't treat people the way that you would normally, right? I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes and did around a lot of negative things. First of all, probably because I may have been drunk, or I didn't feel good and I didn't show up for the things that I would have shown up, right? That wasn't that version of me is no longer me. I do have to deal with the fact that I have to own who that person was at that time in my life, but I also have to give myself that, the one in between, that person that came out of who that version of me was and changed it, because so many people think they're stuck and they think their life experiences and where they are right now is where they need to be all the time, and it's not true. That's a story. You just have to be
Mhm,
willing to do things different. Things don't change unless you change things. And
mhm.
for me, it wasn't running away from problems, but it was finding a new place to go to work on me. Because if you go to a new place to run away from problems and you don't change anything, that's not going to do anything.
Just gonna
Congratulations.
follow
You're
you.
you're the
Just
same
a new
person in a different place.
in a new zip code, that's all.
Exactly. And I think that was a huge period of growth for me. And it did lead me to a healthy relationship with my husband, who I started a relationship with, which it was 2009, right? And we're still here. And again, nothing's perfect. We we work through a lot of things together, but I wouldn't have been able to be the kind of person I needed to be in this relationship if I hadn't done the work on me first. Right? Maybe I would have
Mhm.
met him and I just wouldn't have been ready for that relationship, or I wouldn't have been the person that he needed as a partner. And I think that part is really important, and what I've been trying to do in the last few years is take how do you take all of that and create something for someone else that helps them get out of bad habits, escape
Mhm.
challenges, really kind of push down the paper walls and be the best version of themselves, whether it's health or being empowered or being an entrepreneur. And that's really where I've come to what I'm doing now, which is I own Hopson Health, and we're doing business as ShineUp Coaching, which is a wellness and empowerment coaching program company.
Right, so you are able to show up as this coach because you had that background, because you had the experience of living through some hard stuff, some really hard stuff, and you wouldn't be the coach you are had you not done that. So it's like, because of that time in your life, you are the coach you are now, where it's not just like, oh yeah, I can help people get through hard moments, when you've had kind of like a lot of sunshine in your life, and you're like, I can help you. And it's like, well, how do you know?
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
can't relate to you at all,
yeah,
but now people can relate to you, and you can be like, no, really, I get it. I
yeah.
totally get it,
I'm
and then let's work through from there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like totally distracted. I'm wondering if you can hear the woodpecker over there. It's like knocking on my
No, I
door.
can't hear anything.
Okay, good. Well, and I actually just shared this. So I've partnered with a new media company, which is Now Media, and I literally just said this on an episode yesterday. Is that you really have to find purpose through your pain, and a lot of people get stuck in the painful part. And yes, there is trauma. Yes, there are triggering things. However, you have to choose when you have to choose how much power you're giving to your trauma. Shitty things happen. There are worse things that have happened to people than what I have experienced, and I know that. However, I actually had this conversation with a therapist once, and I said, but well, it could be worse, because that's what I was taught to say. Well, it could be worse because it could absolutely be freaking worse, right? There are people that are raped. There's so many horrible, horrible, horrible things that could happen. And she said, by saying that every single time something negative happens to you, you're not allowing yourself to feel anything. You're not allowing yourself to be disappointed or feel hurt. And then if you're not allowed to feel it, you can't get past it. It's really hard to get past something you haven't felt, experienced, and that let go. So for a lot of people when I'm coaching, you have to acknowledge the things that have happened to you. Absolutely. But if you allow them to continue to have power over you, the only person that is winning, we have to identify it, is the trauma. It's become its own person and it's holding you back from being the best version that you can be. And sometimes I want to shake people because I want so much for people to be successful and to reach their goals. And sometimes you're like, oh, I want to shake you so much because I really want you to achieve this. And the only person holding you back is you. So many times, there's no one standing in front of you physically saying, no, I'm not allowing you to do that. And if there is, that's a totally different conversation. But I would say 99% of the time, the person that is getting in your own way is you and your mindset. And if you choose not to work on them, you're just going to be going in this circle. Want,
Mhm.
trying, failing, giving up, want, trying, failing, giving up. And it feels really frustrating. And that's when people, they don't start the circle again. They just give up.
Mhm. And that's where complacency and everything settles in, and then this like heaviness that
Yeah.
we all know people like that have a heaviness and are just negative and curmudgeons about everything because they have no like hope left in the
Yeah.
things that they can do because they just haven't experienced a breakthrough. And I know you've mentioned this before in other episodes, but we tend to give so much time and attention to like this much of our lives, like you were talking about that hard time when you were really sick, but other people didn't know you were sick, but you're going through this hard moment in life, and it was like in the span of your life it was like this big, but you gave a lot of time and attention to it for a while. And there are people that still give a lot of time and attention to those moments in your life that were actually really small moment or a short amount of time
Yeah.
compared to your whole life, and it was part of your story. And so you need to make it because of my story I'm here,
Yeah.
and not, well, like that's the part that's holding me back. Like you're saying, like it's a physical person.
Yeah. No, I think you described that very well. And like you said, it may have been an impactful thing, but it wasn't something that was around for a really long time. And for me, I think I reflect on it a lot, probably because of the time that it was and because there's guilt there. Right. And we're in a culture where we love shaming ourselves. And you're like, like you just said, it was this much time, but then there's all these other amazing things that were take up a whole lot more time. And I don't focus on those. And that's what I've had to change. That's what I've had to do. And even being vulnerable, I've never been on any kind of platform before where I have said that I've abused alcohol, but it sure as hell happened. And that's something, I had to work through, especially I had already changed, but becoming a health coach and knowing how detrimental all the things that I was doing to myself, but now knowing why I was doing it and why I'm doing the things I do now, why I take care of my body the way I do. Because unfortunately, I am sick again. And that's something I know how to deal with in a healthy way versus reverting back to the habits I would have done 15, 20 years ago. And I think so many people can learn how to go, oh, I'm back in this shitty situation. Instead of reverting to the things I would have done in the past, how do I approach it now and for the better, for myself and for the people around me? And that's what true growing is. And I genuinely just feel like my life at this point has just been one long growth moment. And I think that's what's good about it because if you're not growing, you're going backwards. And if I can say at least I'm growing, whether or not I'm hitting my goals, that's a good thing.
Mhm. And now that's what you can help other people do.
For
And
sure.
so if you're somebody listening to this and you're like, I'm in one of those places again, like that's where we're saying reach out. I mean, this is what we do. We love to help people through these moments. And Jen really stepping into her own business right now with coaching and all these platforms that you're on, TV shows and podcasts. Like it's so awesome, and other people can hear your story and be like, oh, okay, like she's been through it, like I can work with her. And I'm telling you, as Christy, saying that she will absolutely push you through to the next level of yourself, because that I've experienced it more than one time, like many times really, over the last number of years. And it's so, it's just so rewarding to be able to finally break a cycle that you've never been able to step out of. And we don't want to get stuck in that complacent, sad place. So
Yeah.
another part, oh, go ahead. You can,
Well,
I'm going
I
to
was
go
just
back
gonna
to something
say,
else.
yeah, and I was just gonna say is there's nothing extraordinary about me. If you look at most of the things in my life, I am pretty average. However, I choose to show up consistently in my highest power to move past the things that are average about me. And just to say, if you feel like you don't have the capabilities or you're just average, that doesn't matter.
The extraordinary comes from the ordinary, small little moments of a habit every day. The
Exactly.
small little moments, and that's where the extraordinary happens. And we both experienced it so many times that it's really unbelievable, but it's like, wow, it's just because I did the small little mundane ordinary things that are seemingly insignificant, but that's the stuff that compounds, which that makes me think of some of my favorite books, The Compound Effect and The Slight Edge. Those are two of my favorite books on this
I'm
topic
reading
and
The Slight
breaking
Edge
through.
right now.
Are you reading it again? So good. So another thing I did want to come back to is you had told us your story, but there's a part of it that I know, of course, that I would love for you to share, because maybe a lot of our listeners don't know this, but you had talked about going into being an entrepreneur, and specifically at the time it was network marketing. And I would love for you to share your story about how skeptical you were of network marketing. You didn't really share that part. And I feel like that's a really key part of your story, because especially our podcast being happy, healthy, and skeptical, like because there's that side that I think is a big part of your story.
For sure.
I
I
think a
mean,
lot of
it
people would love to hear that.
is. I mean, and I'm still a skeptic at heart. I mean, I live in New England, so it comes with the territory. So, as I had mentioned, my younger sister was living in DC, and at the time I was 32 and figured I should probably wash my face with something other than Dove soap. And she said, "Well, I have a business and we have skincare." I said, "Oh, you have a business? That's so cute. So nice for you." And she said, "No, I do, and this could help." And I said, "Okay." And then she had also in the same conversation said, I met a guy in Scotland, which this is an entirely different conversation. Side note, she is married to him. He's an amazing man, and she lives in Scotland. And she said, "I'm going to move there to see if, this is the real deal." And she had been working in the restaurant industry in DC, and I knew she didn't have enough money to not work for 6 months and live in, like, and actually survive in Scotland. I said, "Well, what, how, like a lot of just what?" And she said, "Well, I have an online business that will allow me to still create an income and test this thing out and really take a chance on this relationship." I said, "Oh, okay, sure you do." And she said, "I know you will never believe me because I am her older sister, so I know all things." And she said, "But I do know the person that I'm working with can explain this better." And that was when I was introduced to Leslie Humphrey. She's an executive national vice president with our company, and I gave them the 20 minutes that I had on my lunch break that I typically use to avoid everyone else in the office or go eat lunch or whatever it was, right? It's like your protected time in the middle of the day. And I went in my car and I sat there and I video chatted with my sister who was in DC and Leslie Humphrey, who was also in DC at the time. And she told me all the smartest things, right? It was great to learn about network marketing because I have been in traditional retail, brick and mortar retail, which, if you have any knowledge of what's going on with brick and mortar retail, this is now almost 10 years ago, it hasn't gotten any better. And it was all these really amazing things, and I told her, I said, "I'm willing to try it for 90 days." And I remember saying that to my husband too. Not that I needed his permission, but it was kind of like "Hey, this is what I'm going to do for 90 days. Let's see how it goes." And for me, within 90 days, my original monetary goal was met. And also this goal I didn't anticipate of, there's so much more to this opportunity than what I originally understood. And that's when I was all in, and what I mean by all in is was a whole 30 minutes of my day all in on the side of what I was already doing, which was already being a mom, being a wife, working 40 to 50 hours a week on top of commuting. And it allowed me to understand that I was capable of more than what I thought I was, that I didn't need to choose this toxic corporate environment to continue what I wanted to be doing, to take care of my family, to participate in taking care of my family monetary and otherwise. And I was able to walk away from that full-time job July 17th of 2020, both that business and the belief in myself that I could make that leap, which is a scary freaking leap, right? However, I would have had to do it regardless because it was July 2020 and my oldest son was starting online kindergarten. That was fun. So this business gave me the opportunity to not have to stress about that because one of us would have had to leave our job in some capacity to support him through that transition. So that was a game changer. If I hadn't have been dropped this 3 years before, all I know is my anxiety, which is typically kinda high, would have been through the roof, and I don't know what I would have done. It would have been more of a struggle than it already was.
Right. So it gave you a choice. This business gave you the choice that you started 3 years ago. 3 years before that, you never would have seen this coming. Nobody ever would have seen COVID coming and all being home, having to homeschool a kindergartner
Yeah.
and having it, like, it just gives me chills because having experienced the business the same, where of course I was skeptical of it. Everybody tells you, no, don't get into that. But meanwhile, it gave us, both of us, different stories, but it gave us choice in a way that we never saw possible. And it gives me like chills to think about that because it's just so much possibility.
Yeah. I think and what's crazy is that wasn't the only time my network marketing business saved me. In what I didn't share is in that amount of time in those first 3 years, my husband had been laid off 2 or 3 times just because of his industry. It's what happened, and so that was another time where it helped us out. I had 2 miscarriages. I don't know where I would have been with my mindset without that community as well. It's not just about the monetary value, which don't get me wrong, I like to make money, okay? I like to help people make money, but it needs to come with something else. You can't just be driven by money. You have to be driven by vision and belief and a supportive community. I mean, it's out there all the time. There is a quote, "You will go further together." There is a reason it is so popular because it is true. You will go further together versus trying to march through it on your own. And that business has supported me in more ways than one, through layoffs, through loss, through, and people have joined me and they've had amazing success. People have joined me and they've chosen not to show up for themselves. People have joined me and they have left because the business did what it needed to do at that point in their life and it showed up for them when they needed it and they felt like they could put it down and walk away. But they always know that it's there when they need it. And I think that's super important is people always know that who I've been in contact with is that it's there regardless, no matter when you need it. And if you have had a negative experience, I'm here to remind you that maybe it was just the company or the people, or you didn't actually give it a chance because you doomed it to fail.
That's a good point. It just tends to be, again, we don't know what we don't know. And so we're not sure of where our shortcomings are going to be.
Well, but and it could honestly be with anything, right? And stop pigeonholing network marketing. That could be if you started your own restaurant. Like, people think it just happens in that industry. That's bull, right? People have gone and become real estate agents and they are horrible at it, or they didn't have the right firm around them, or right. There's so many things we take chances on that can fail. It's not limited to this one industry. What is great about this industry is the lack of commitment you actually need if you're not ready, right?
I was just going to
There
say, yes, there's barely any investment compared to a real, like, I don't want to say real, that's not what I was going
a
to say,
different
but
structure
a
of
different
business
structure of business.
for
Yes,
sure.
where your initial investment could be thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands,
Mhm.
where our experience was barely anything compared to anything
Yeah.
like that. And so if it doesn't fit your life in the moment, it's like, okay, well, it's okay.
You're not gonna lose your shirt if it doesn't work out. Where there that's not true of every industry, and honestly, those things scare me a whole lot more than having haters in network marketing, and yeah, you
Right.
have
And
to
I
have
love that it actually gives people who might not have the money to have started a business that they wanted, it gives them the chance to start something like this that could be something that they never expected,
for
where
sure.
they might not have had the means to do something else.
And if you have the right coaching, I mean, I knew a lot about business already, but I got so much from my mentor. There's more than one in the training conferences. Like it's just different ways to think about things, and you can learn so much. And maybe like me, I still do my network marketing business. I love it. I'm not going anywhere, but I've utilized everything I've learned there to create something else available to people, and that's what a lot of people do. So I'll talk about it till the day is long, but I think it's been a big part of my journey. But I also think a big part of my journey has been growth, personal development, vulnerability, and realizing it's okay to not be the person you thought you were going to be the person that you were meant to be could be two totally different things.
That is a profound statement right there. That one just hit me. That was really good. I've never heard you say that before. And that was like, I feel like somebody else needed to hear that. I needed to hear that today.
Right?
Because
I
you
mean,
never really
because
think of that. And I've heard that in other scenarios that you sometimes have to grieve the loss of what you thought was going to be. And in this instance, it's who you thought you were going to be,
mhm.
ourselves. And wow, that's like, I feel like that leaves a lot of, it frees up a lot of space. It frees up a lot of energy of like, wow, I thought I was going to be this person and I'm not. Um, but I am this other version that I never expected.
Yeah,
And
and
so
yeah,
I know,
accepting
yeah,
it.
yeah, and accepting it. So I know we got a lot into network marketing today, which actually was cool. Again, these conversations, we just let them flow. And I think it's awesome to share our experience with it because sometimes it's just people don't understand and don't know. But you have, like you said, you have your network marketing business has morphed into more of your own company now. And so before we head out, I would love you to share a little bit more about ShineUp, or if you have any shout outs you want to give about the company.
For sure. So, what actually, this is the first time I've announced it. It's not even on social media before. So, the original program that we came out with is Shine Well, which is a 4-week health and wellness program. However, we are now coming out with Shine Well Premier, which is a 90-day health and wellness program. And the reason I love 90 days, 4 weeks will always be the introduction program, but 90 days is the sweet spot, right? It's where we truly start to develop habits, and habits are what
Lifelong
right?
habits.
Habits are what carry us through. So it's Shine Up Coaching. And the idea of Shine Up Coaching is it has 3 pillars, which is health and wellness, empowerment, and entrepreneur. And those two are coming. But if you are ready, or you're sick of yo yo dieting, or you need a coach, you need accountability, you need recipes, right? Or you've been avoiding journaling, even though we talk about it all the time, and you need to work on your mindset, because honestly, health is 90% mindset, 10% execution, then definitely connect with me. You can always connect with me on Instagram at ShineUp Coaching, or you can actually email me directly at jenniferhopsonvp at gmail.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad we got to do this. It's wonderful to dive more into Jennifer Hopson and behind the scenes and what has happened all of these years to lead you to where you are today. And I think it's so inspiring, and a lot of people can relate to where you've been, where you're heading, who you are now.
And there's so much
And
left to do.
I know there's so much left. So connect with us too on our Instagram for the podcast at Happy Healthy Skeptical, and we will see you next time.